Toledo is Ohio's greatest railroad center and the third largest rail center of the nation. It is only exceeded by Chicago and St. Louis. Toledo is entered by 24 steam lines, 4 electric lines, 15 passenger bus lines, and 112 truck lines. Moreover, it annually has a waterborne commerce of around 25 million tons of freight, which tonnage is only exceeded by that handled through New York, Duluth, and Philadelphia in the order named. Toledo's shipping activities are due to its strategic geographical position. It is on a direct line between New York and Chicago, and all the large cities which lie between them. It is also in line between Detroit and the large centers of population to the south, and it is a convenient port of embarkation for the cargoes of coal from Ohio and West Virginia fields. It is a most interesting sight to see the incessant coming and going of all types of trains through the train yards of Toledo. At the entrance to Spiegel Grove, the park-like estate where Rutherford B. Hayes lived when he was elected President of the United States, is this memorial building, containing a splendid collection of Hayes memorabilia. By paths that wind through the park, we find our way to the grave of the President. It is marked by a simple headstone, befitting the life of this man of great thoughts and quiet ways. In all directions, the eye is greeted by stately trees, beds of flowers, and inviting pools. After all, we believe Hayes has the best resting place of any of Ohio's 8 presidents. In the heart of Fremont stands the cannon, Old Betsy, marking the site of Fort Stephenson, where took place an historical incident fitted by bravery involved to take its place among the most courageous deeds of our country. General Harrison deemed Fort Stephenson to be ill-fitted to withstand a severe attack, and hence he placed in it only a small garrison of 180 men and this one cannon, under command of 20-year-old Major Croghan, who had orders to retreat to Fort Seneca, 9 miles away. Major Croghan's comrades were all youthful lads like himself. They possessed unbounded patriotism and nerve, and like him, were willing to die in defense of their flag. On his mother's side, Croghan was related to George Rogers Clark, and on his father's side, to that redoubtable Irishman, William Croghan, hero of the Battle of Brandywine. Fort Stephenson consisted of 3 blockhouses and a picketed enclosure. Late in July 1813, the sentries of Fort Stephenson were alertly walking their posts. Meanwhile, at General Harrison's headquarters, they were anxiously awaiting word of the movements of the British and Indians. At length a scout arrived, bringing word that the enemy had abandoned the siege of Fort Meigs on the Maumee River and was on the way up the Sandusky River to attack either Fort Stephenson or Fort Seneca. Harrison immediately dispatched word to Croghan instructing him to abandon his position at Fort Stephenson. The bearers of the orders lost their way and arrived too late for Croghan to carry out the command. That night a force of 1,200 British regulars and 700 Indians surrounded Fort Stephenson. In the dusk, Croghan assembled his men and explained the situation. They agreed with him to hold the fort at all hazards and make the most of their one cannon. Croghan decided upon a most unique plan of defense. Hurriedly, their only cannon was placed at one part of the fort and fired at the enemy, then rushed to a second point and fired, thence to a third position, and so on, giving the enemy the idea that the fort was defended by a whole row of cannon. Caused the enemy to attack at one point instead of all along the line, and here Croghan placed this one cannon and massed his 180 men. As the British advanced up the hill, Croghan gave them a load of slugs from Old Betsy. Under the withering, concentrated fire from the fort, the enemy retreated. Once more Old Betsy was filled with slugs and made ready to receive the attackers, who were not long. But Old Betsy and the garrison were too much for them, and with 150 dead they fled from the field, and daylight raised over the fort as before. Other tribes will present more of the story of Ohio. Moravian missionaries established the village of Schoenbrunn, or as pronounced in the vernacular, Shun, located, has been called Ohio's first town, although it was not a permanent, as was the case with Mary. Fine replicas of Ohio's first church in person is one of the most interesting things in this country. Its name means beautiful spring, and its story was tersely and significantly told in a sign that once hung over the village spring. It read, 1772, much water, many Indians. 1822, little water, few Indians. 1872, no water, no Indians. There were originally 60 houses, besides many lodges and huts. Indians were pledged not to participate in war, nor buy the spoils of war. Their desire for peace was misunderstood in a frontier torn by constant fighting, and finally the town was burned. It was restored in 1928. A map of the town, discovered in Moravian archives in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, provided an accurate plan for the work. The houses are reconstructed and furnished down to the last detail according to their period.